Hello, this is Adam, otherwise known as Aeronorg, over on the Procreate forums. I'm going to demo my watercolour workflow as it has been updated for Procreate 4 today. It's worth mentioning that not much has actually changed in the way I approach watercolour from the last version of Procreate. Much is still the same. I have updated my brushes for the new brush engine, so you'll want to re-download the latest versions, and I also have a few additional new brushes and a couple of smudges, and I've tweaked the textures throughout my base file and displacement map, so you'll want to re-download everything, which I will provide links for on a forum post. There's a few more steps of post-production as well, but we'll go through that later in this video. As with the last version of this workflow, you'll need an iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil to take advantage of this approach. Two new features that have really helped with watercolour in Procreate 4 is the addition of the Wet Mix Brush Renderer and Brush Blend modes. The Wet Mix brush rendering setting makes a brush act very similar to the smudge tool, and smudging itself is also way better in Procreate 4. Brush blend modes allow you to set the blending mode of your strokes independent of the blending mode of your layer. I set my smudges and my mixers to a wet mix rendering mode, and one thing to note that caught me out is that you can't actually set a blending mode on a wet mix brush, only glazed and normal. Wet mix, when combined with pressure and tilt from the Apple Pencil and adding a little bit of jitter, really makes the brush feel organic and realistic. As powerful as they are, the brush blend modes are actually rarely used in my workflow. I do use them on certain brushes, mainly set to multiply, but otherwise my brushes are pretty much set to normal. When I do require the blending modes, I'll usually set it to multiply, make my brush strokes, and then set it back to normal. I've updated my base file, and this includes many more layers in the texture and wash section. The main reason for this is to increase the realism. Unfortunately, it's also resulted in a bigger file size. I did try to consolidate the layer structure, but the nature of how the blending modes work, it wasn't really possible to get the exact effect I was after. The way the structure works is the higher layers will affect everything below them, which incidentally is why I couldn't easily consolidate them. Each layer in the texture and wash section is doing a specific thing, so it's isolating a specific part of the structure of the paper, or a specific quality of the paper, such as reflectivity or light absorption. The end effect is a quite realistic rendition of watercolour and how it looks in the real world. It's quite transparent, and this is really brought out by the different layers and the pigment appearing to sit on top of the paper and interact with it. I still start each project by tapping on my workflow macro, and this copies a base file into Procreate and a timestamp to the clipboard. I can then go in Procreate's gallery and rename my project to the current time. So you'll see in the background here we've sort of got like a time lapse of a painting I've made, and we've just finished it and taking it into Affinity Photo now. So I have a folder where I keep a default landscape and a default portrait, so I'm just going to copy that now, rename it, and sped this up a bit so that we're not sitting around at the speed I work, which is much slower than this. So we've got the same size document in Affinity Photo, paste our base paint layer in, and we're going to quickly run the displacement map, which I've updated. So I'm going to find that, and I've got two versions. I've got a landscape and a portrait, so just the tagged ones there. just select the appropriate one and check the displacement. Zoom in, zoom out till you're happy with it. And once that's done, I'm going to run a macro that I created in the desktop version of Affinity Photo that basically isolates the edges. And after that, I'm going to break those edges up so that they're not so solid. So I'm going to create a mask with some noise to do that. So I'm going to take a fill layer that was created earlier and just run some noise over it. And go through a couple iterations till I'm happy. So what this is going to do is create a mask to break it up the the edge pattern that we created in the other layer with the macro. So once that's done, we'll rasterize it to a mask, and you can see it's broken it up from to a less solid version, but it looks like I wasn't happy with it, so I redid it. Check it again, I guess that looks better. So now we will export that, share it as a PNG, set it to the clipboard, go back into Procreate and paste it, and then we'll set grab the base layer as well, do the same thing, copy to the clipboard and paste it above the paint layer. And then we are going to set the first one to color burn. So I duplicated the isolated edges there, so the first one's color burn, and then I'm running a blur on it. And then I'll set the second one to linear burn and run a blur on that. And that sort of fills in the whole pattern. Bring it back up a bit. And then I'm just going to go on the base paint layer and brighten it up a bit. Depending on the image, I might do individual channels here as well. But I think this one was fine with that. And after all that's done, we're going to copy everything, the whole canvas, and paste it on top and run the sharpen filter just till I'm happy with it, and that sort of gives this really nice effect of the pigment sitting right on top of the paper and sharpens the paper texture a bit as well. So once that's done, I'm going to sign it and then we are done. So I hope this was helpful, and let me know in the forums.